My sister stole $5,000 from the family, but they blamed me for it, because no one can believe that my sister is capable of such a thing. They said it was more like me. My parents accused me of stealing $5,000 from the safe. They said there was no one else who could have done it. When I asked why they were not considering Emily, they refused to listen. They said she had a good job and no reason to steal. They told me I was irresponsible with money and more likely to do something like this. They warned me to return the money or face the consequences. They said they would call the police if I did not. No matter what I said, they did not believe me. Next day, I went to Emily and told her that I knew she had taken the money. She acted confused at first, but then she started laughing. She denied it, but her attitude made it clear she wasn't worried. When I kept pressing her, she told me that even if she had done it, no one would believe me. Had always known that my parents favored her. They saw her as the responsible one, the successful one, the one who could do no wrong. She had a stable job and a carefully maintained image, but I had seen the reality behind it. She was constantly spending beyond her means, always showing off expensive things she couldn't afford. She traveled, bought designer clothes, and went to exclusive events, but none of it matched her actual income. I realized she had no reason to be afraid. My parents had already decided I was guilty, and no matter what I said, they would not believe anything different. Emily knew this, and she had no reason to explain herself. She simply walked away, leaving me to deal with the consequences. I told them again that I didn't take anything, but they dismissed my words without hesitation. They said I was making things worse for myself by lying. They insisted that only I could have done it, that my history of being careless with money made me the obvious culprit. When I brought up Emily, they refused to hear it. They repeated the same thing. They believed she had no reason to steal, but I did not. I pointed out that I had no way of accessing their safe, but they had already convinced themselves that I must have figured out how. They called me dishonest and irresponsible, saying this was exactly the kind of thing they had always expected from me. They acted as if this was just another one of my mistakes, something that proved I couldn't be trusted. The conversation wasn't just about the missing money anymore. They started bringing up old arguments, listing every time they thought I had let them down. They accused me of always being reckless, never thinking about consequences, always making bad decisions. They made it clear that this wasn't just about the theft, it was about the way they saw me as a person. I realized there was no way out. They had already judged me guilty. No matter what I said, no matter how much I defended myself, they weren't going to believe me. They told me they would give me one day to return the money. If I didn't, they would report me to the police. I knew Emily had taken the money. There was no one else who could have done it. My parents never considered that she might be guilty because they had already decided she was above suspicion. They believed her life was perfect, her good job, her responsible nature, the way she always made them proud. But I had seen the reality. Emily's life was not as stable as she pretended it was. She spent far more than she earned, constantly buying expensive clothes, going on trips, and keeping up appearances for social media. She made it look effortless, but I knew it wasn't. I had overheard her on the phone before, talking about credit card bills she could barely pay. I had seen her stress over money when no one else was looking. The missing $5,000 wasn't a mystery to me. She had taken it because she needed it. Maybe she had debts, maybe she was behind on payments, maybe she had made promises she couldn't keep. Whatever the reason, she saw an opportunity and took it. And she didn't feel guilty because she knew no one would ever suspect her. I had no proof. I had no way to make my parents listen. I knew that if I kept accusing her, they would only see it as another excuse. In their eyes, I was the one who couldn't be trusted. They had already decided that I was guilty, and Emily knew it. That's why she wasn't afraid. I thought about confronting her again, but I knew it would be pointless. She had made it clear, no one would believe me. She had stolen from our parents, and I was the one who would take the blame. There was nothing I could do. My parents refused to wait any longer. They told me they had given me enough time, and that if I didn't return the money immediately, they would go to the police. They reminded me that stealing from family was a serious crime, and that they wouldn't hesitate to take action if I didn't make things right. I tried one last time to tell them the truth. I told them again that I didn't take the money, that Emily was the only one who could have done it. They didn't even let me finish. My father cut me off, saying he was tired of my lies. My mother said I had already disappointed them enough. They didn't want to hear another word from me unless it was an admission of guilt. They demanded I pay them back. They said it didn't matter how I got the money, only that I returned what I stole. I told them I didn't have that kind of money, but they didn't care. They said I had to figure it out. I had no choice. I emptied my savings. Every dollar I had saved over the years was gone in a single moment. I transferred the money to them, watching as my parents acted as if justice had been served. They said I had done the right thing, that at least I was taking responsibility for my mistakes. They told me I should learn from this and be more careful in the future. Emily never said a word. She never admitted to anything. She didn't even try to explain herself. She didn't have to. She had already won. I had taken the blame for her, and she knew I had no way to change that. I had lost my money, my parents' trust, and any chance of proving my innocence. But there was nothing left to fight for. They had taken everything from me, and they still believed I was the one who had done something wrong. After I handed over the money, my parents acted as if everything had been resolved. They no longer looked at me with anger, but the disappointment remained. They told me they were relieved that I had done the right thing and that it was time to move on. They said that while they would never forget what I had done, at least I had shown some responsibility by returning what I stole. They didn't ask how I got the money. They didn't care if it meant giving up everything I had saved. The fact that I had returned it only confirmed their belief that I had been guilty all along. There was no apology, no reconsideration, no sign that they had any doubts about what had happened. To them, the matter was closed. Emily never acknowledged what had happened. She went on with her life as if nothing had changed. She still posted about expensive dinners, trips, and new purchases, keeping up the image of someone who had everything under control. She never once thanked me or even admitted that she had put me in this situation. She didn't have to. She had one. For days, I kept thinking about whether there was anything I could have done differently. I considered trying to gather proof, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Even if I somehow found evidence that she had stolen the money, my parents wouldn't accept it. They would justify their actions, twist the truth, or simply refuse to acknowledge it. I thought about confronting Emily again, but I knew how it would go. She would laugh, dismiss me, or remind me that no one would ever believe me over her. She didn't fear any consequences because she knew there would never be any. I considered cutting my parents out of my life completely, but I wasn't sure if I could. They were still my family, and even after everything, part of me still wanted their approval. I had spent my whole life being compared to Emily, trying to prove that I was just as good, just as responsible, just as worthy of their trust. But no matter what I did, it had never been enough. Now, I had given up my money, my dignity, and any hope of being seen as innocent. Emily had taken what she wanted without any consequences, and my parents had gotten back their stolen money while still believing I was the one who took it. The truth didn't matter. It never had. After handing over the money, I stopped arguing with my parents. There was no point. They had already decided I was guilty, and nothing would change their minds. They treated me differently now, not with open hostility, but with a quiet, lingering distrust. My father still spoke to me, but only when necessary. My mother avoided unnecessary conversations. Neither of them looked at me the same way. I noticed how quickly things returned to normal for everyone else. Emily continued her life without concern. She still spent money freely, still showed off her lifestyle, still acted like she had done nothing wrong. The fact that I had lost everything meant nothing to her. She never once mentioned what had happened, and neither did my parents. I thought about trying to rebuild my savings, but the loss was too much. I had spent years setting that money aside, and now it was gone. I found myself resenting my parents not just for taking it, but for how easily they had dismissed me afterward. They got what they wanted, so the problem was over. I started distancing myself. I avoided conversations. I stopped making an effort to be around them. I stayed out of the house whenever possible, working longer hours or spending time alone. No one seemed to notice. If they did, they didn't care enough to ask why. Some point, I stopped caring too. I realized that nothing I did mattered. I could try to prove myself, try to win their trust back, try to show them I wasn't the person they thought I was, but it wouldn't change anything. I had been fighting a battle I was never going to win. Emily had taken what she needed and moved on. My parents had punished me and moved on. I was the only one left dealing with the consequences. Weeks passed, and I kept my distance from my family. They didn't seem to mind. My parents acted as if everything had gone back to normal, and Emily carried on with her life as if nothing had happened. I tried to move on too, but losing my savings wasn't something I could ignore. I had worked hard for that money, and now I was starting over with nothing. Then, something happened that changed everything. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I came across a post from someone Emily used to be friends with. They had commented under a vague post about people who live beyond their means, tagging Emily in the replies. Curious, I clicked on the profile. What I found confirmed everything I already knew. Emily was in serious debt. The comments under the post mentioned unpaid loans, borrowed money that was never returned, and expensive trips she had taken while owing people thousands. Someone even mentioned that she had maxed out her credit cards. I kept reading, piecing together the truth. She had been borrowing from friends, promising to pay them back, but never doing it. People had started talking, and her reputation was catching up with her. I realized then why she had stolen the money. She hadn't just been living beyond her means, she had been drowning in debt. And rather than fix her mistakes, she had done what she always did. She found an easy way out, knowing she wouldn't have to deal with the consequences. I thought about showing the posts to my parents. If they saw proof of her financial problems, maybe they would finally understand that she was the one who had taken the money. Maybe they would finally believe me. But then I stopped myself. It wouldn't change anything. Even if they saw the proof, they would make excuses for her. They would say people were lying. They would say she was just going through a rough time. They would find a way to twist the situation so that it wasn't her fault. They always did. I closed the post and put my phone down. The truth was right there, but it didn't matter. It never had. After seeing the proof of Emily's debts, I knew there was nothing left for me here. My parents had already decided who I was in their eyes, and no amount of evidence would change that. If I showed them the posts, they would defend her. If I confronted Emily again, she would mock me. Nothing would come from trying to clear my name. I made my decision. I stopped answering my parents' calls unless absolutely necessary. I avoided family gatherings. When they needed something from me, I gave the shortest response possible. I no longer cared about explaining myself or trying to prove anything. They had taken my savings, my trust, and my dignity, and they never even looked back. I refused to give them anything else. Emily's problems eventually caught up with her. A few months later, I overheard my mother complaining to a relative about how Emily had gotten herself into some financial trouble. They didn't know I was listening. My mother sounded frustrated, but not surprised. She still made excuses for her, saying people were exaggerating, that Emily would figure things out. They didn't mention the stolen $5,000. They never would. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel anything. I had spent so much time being angry, being frustrated, trying to make them see the truth. Now, I just felt tired. I knew I couldn't change the past, but I could control what happened next. I decided I would focus on myself. I would rebuild what I had lost, not for them, not to prove anything, but for me. I stopped looking for their approval. I stopped caring about their opinions. They had shown me who they really were. It was my turn to show them that I didn't need them anymore. I don't know if I made the right choice. Should I have fought harder to clear my name? Should I have confronted them one last time? Or was walking away the only real option?